Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. This show is about Plymouth County real estate. This show is being taped in April. We're reporting on the March activity at the Registry of Deeds. We're going to go into some of our great county and colony history, and we hope you learn a little bit about what's happening in the real estate market, because for most people, your real estate is your most valuable asset. So the headline for the month was, March sales are lower with uncertainty on the horizon. So let's get right to the numbers and we can kind of explain that point. First image you're going to see on the screen is of deeds. Deeds are sales of property. There were 464 deeds recorded in March. You can see it's relatively low, certainly lower than the 421 in February, 9% less than last year in terms of the same month. However, 4% higher year to date. Our average sale price across a very varied group of communities, 27 communities in Plymouth County. Some are very wealthy and high-end sales. Some are more moderate, working towns. But the average sale price across those 27 communities is $654,471. You're also going to see a story in the next image, which is sales. You can see in the communities from Abington to Whitman, there have been sales. Again, the real estate activity right now is relatively modest. There's a very low inventory on the market. Interest rates are higher than they were 2 years ago, and people are very hesitant in this climate that we're in, with consumer confidence eroding every day, to make a move. They'd rather stay put, so that's affected our market. But as you can see, in every community, from Abington to Whitman, there are sales. Plymouth and Brockton being the highest two, but every single one of our towns had sales all the way January, February, and March. So let's go to the next barometer, and the next thing we follow very closely, mortgages. There were 1,030 mortgages recorded in March, more than the 847 in February, 10% more than last March, and 12% more year to date. We're hoping if the interest rates come down, more and more people will be able to refinance out of their higher rates. And the whole issue of that happening relates a lot to what the Federal Reserve is doing. And as the chairman of the Federal Reserve stated last week, he's very hesitant to make any harsh, significant moves because of his concern for the overall marketplace with tariffs and other issues that are ongoing. The next image you'll see is of foreclosure deeds. A foreclosure deed is when a lender has taken back the property from an owner, usually for non-payment. Non-payment can be from a variety of things, a job loss, a health issue, any complications in paying your bills. So if you find yourself facing difficulty, reach out to a federal housing counselor as soon as possible. We have a great relationship with NeighborWorks, a federal housing counselor. They receive every month all of our foreclosure notices, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. People that are facing difficulty paying their mortgages, and they try to find a way to modify your mortgage. Don't give up. If you find yourself facing difficulty, the sooner you get to it, the better. And I know going forward in these tumultuous times, we are going to see more people facing difficulty. However, for the month of March, there were 11 foreclosure deeds throughout the county, the whole county, more than the 6 in February, but 39% less than last March. The next image you're going to see is, as I spoke about, a foreclosure notice. A foreclosure notice is the first document we get at the registry that is recorded that shows me a property is in difficulty. There haven't been a lot since the COVID problem a couple of years ago. During COVID, the lenders all were required to have a moratorium in place. They couldn't do foreclosure notices. They couldn't do foreclosure deeds. And the lenders really have not caught up very much with it. So, for example, there were only 42 foreclosure notices in March and higher than the 35 in February. But again, pay attention. Next image you're going to see is a listing, again, of our 27 towns, Abington down to Whitman, and you'll see a lot of zeros still there. On the right-hand side, the orders are noticed, the properties that are in trouble, and the property on the left are the foreclosure deeds. And as I mentioned, with the lenders not really pursuing these vigorously at this time, there are a lot of zeros. But again, you don't want to be the one that they choose to go after because you haven't paid attention and tried to fix your problem. So I want to mention to people, again, there's a great concern out there for property fraud. I do a lot of visitations to senior centers across Plymouth County, and that is the number one problem they bring up because there's a lot of things on the news about it, particularly advertising for people to join different programs. I can tell you with my many, many years of experience, there is not a lot of fraud in our marketplace. And unfortunately, the most fraud comes within family members. When an elderly person passes on their needs to one of their children, they freeze out other children. Could be a girlfriend. In one case we had of a gentleman that had been incarcerated, and she tried to take advantage of his property, and that was caught. And with the advent of more and more artificial intelligence in the marketplace, the ability to replicate your signature, we expect there'll be attempts to try to do that. But my suggestion is, right now, the best thing you can do is go to our website, PlymouthDeeds.org. Go to our website, PlymouthDeeds.org, and go to the resources section, and you can sign up under Fraud Alert. Put your email in, put your name, and anything recorded against your name, you'll get an email. And that is what the Fraud Protection Program does. And if you do get an email, and it is not something you think should have gone on record, you can immediately go to our office and make sure it was something that should have gone on record, like payment of a mortgage discharge, paying off a loan or something, and you can immediately try to deal with it. There are stories of people that go to Florida for the winter and they don't have anybody watching their property. All of a sudden, somebody pops up a sign in their lawn and your property's under agreement. That hardly ever happens, but you have to be vigilant with your property. For most people, real estate is your number one asset, and pay attention to your number one asset. So take advantage of our property fraud alert. You're also going to get a lot of mailings that say you need to have a copy of your deed, pay $80 to them, and they'll get it for you. You can go to one of our offices to get a copy of our deed for $1 a page. If you can't do that, call our customer service department at 508-830-9290, and they can help you through our customer service department, email you or send you by mail a copy of your deed so you can keep an eye on it. And that is what our advice to you is today. I'm going to roll right into another segment of the show. This show is being taped on Patriots Day, so I haven't brought in a guest today. A lot of people are working, but a lot of people have the state holiday off. So in our Plymouth County Notable Record Collection, we have a lot of stories that we tell about our deeds. We try to line them up with the holidays of the month. So this month, April Fool's Day, National Grilled Cheese Day, Tax Day the 15th, Easter was this past weekend on the 20th, today, Patriots Day on the 21st, Earth Day coming up on the 22nd, Arbor Day on the 29th, I believe, National Pretzel Day later. So bringing up one of our great heroes of the Revolutionary War, it was a woman who grew up in the town of Plymouth. She was born in December of 1760, the oldest of 6 children of John and Deborah Sampson, and her legacy goes back to Governor William Bradford and way back to the early days of Plymouth Colony. In 1782, at the age of 21, Deborah Sampson wanted to fight for the establishment of independence for our new country. So what she did was she dressed up as a man and entered the 4th Massachusetts Regiment and went under the name of Robert Shirtliff. She was a very successful person in battling for our cause in the Revolutionary War. She fought for 16 months, fought in battles at West Point and Tarrytown, New York. She was wounded 3 times, and she was honorably discharged from the Army by General George Washington in 1783. She later married and moved to the town of Sharon, which claims her, but she is a Plymouth County person by birth. So her likeness adorns the flag of the town of Plymouth. She died at the age of 66, but there is a monument in her honor. So if you're driving down Route 58 and you're cutting through the town of Plymouth, on the Plymouth Green, you can pull over and see that monument in her honor right on Plymouth Town Green. In 1983, she was designated by the state legislature and the governor as the official state heroin. So the next notable record we're going to talk about relates to the upcoming Earth Day. So the environmental movement has taken a lot of fits and starts over time. Clearly, the establishment of the Environmental Protection Agency preceded all these climate change efforts. But in the early days of this movement, there was a woman by the name of Rachel Carson. So Rachel Carson was a friend of Stuart and Olga Huckins, who lived in Duxbury. And they had bird sanctuaries on their property. At the time, there was aerial spraying of those properties. And it was found they were killing the birds in the bird sanctuaries. And the landowners were friends of Rachel Carson, and they wanted her to know that when a plane flew over and used a mixture of oil and DDT, it killed the birds, the bees, and other insects. Rachel visited Duxbury in the Huckins property over years, and she was alarmed by that story. So Rachel Carson wrote a book called Silent Spring, which at the time was very controversial, not unlike climate change today. And the book was based on those stories. Many environmental science classes have that book as a must-read because many people credit Rachel Carson's book as being the impetus for the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency in today's climate change debate. The next image you're going to see is we're entering not only Earth Day, but Arbor Day. Arbor Day was certainly one of the first movements to protect our environment. So we talk a lot about our trees, and many people go out and purchase and plant trees on Arbor Day. Trees are known as producing oxygen that can offset many environmental problems in our air. So I figured I'd pick one of our famous trees. There's a tree in Brockton that was on a site owned by Edward Bennett in downtown Brockton. And that tree was used as a stop because it was this tall, beautiful tree. It was very noticeable for miles around. It was a large sycamore tree, and people would use it as a beacon for people traveling north on the Underground Railroad, the path that many escaped slaves took to go to Canada. So this Liberty tree lived for many, many, many years, and it brought conductors to that site. Conductors were called the individuals who managed the Underground Railroad to bring escaped slaves north. They hid them in the barn in a building that Edward Bennett owned on that street. Because of his beliefs, that in their beliefs that all men were created equal. And so when that tree disintegrated, the people of Brockton decided they would take offshoots of that tree and replant the tree. So if you're ever driving through Brockton and you can go up what is now known as that was known as Liberty Street, and please pull over and drive through that street, which is now named as Frederick Douglass Way, because Frederick Douglass Way is named after a slave who escaped, Frederick Douglass, who came and spoke at that site many years ago to try to promote the freedom of people escaping from slavery and equal rights in America. And a plaque is there donated by the Brockton High School class of 1959. And it's been renovated. It's a beautiful spot in the history of Plymouth County. So we always try to do one of our notable records from our time of Plymouth Colony. We were very active in the Plymouth 400 movement back in the day when they were highlighting the importance of the arrival of the Mayflower 400 years earlier, and all of the great accomplishments of the colonists, so-called pilgrims, the many things they did, how they worked together with the Native Americans to build gardens and things that would help them survive, how half of them died the first winter, but they still maintained a common interest in moving forward, how they established the first right in America to trial by jury of 12 honest men. Women weren't included back then. And the division of property when they decided to go from common ownership to private property, which is set up private property rights in America, the foundation of our realtor associations throughout America. But we've told a lot of the stories because, again, deeds can tell stories. And in this particular deed, in 1645, there was a gentleman by the name of John Holmes, and he had sold a piece of property to a woman in Duxbury, and the consideration, what he sold it about, was for corn. So Experience Mitchell of Duxbury bargained and sold for 12 bushels of corn. She bought 2 acres of land in Duxbury. And that's how things happened at that time. Sometimes it was bartering. Sometimes it was, a shillings, English money. There was once a mortgage that was taken out, and the collateral was a brown cow named Bessie. But we love the stories of those times and how they worked together to survive, and we'll continue to promote the stories not only of Plymouth County, but of Plymouth Colony. So I want to thank the folks here at the local scene for letting us tell this story, not only the history of Plymouth County and Plymouth Colony, but some of the things you should know about the property that you own, because again, for most people, your real estate is your most valuable asset. So we'll see you next month.